This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.
Lucy Snow, a young woman in her early 20s, found herself utterly alone in the world. The loss of her family had stripped away all her prospects in England, leaving her adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The small, bare room that had been her sanctuary now felt like a prison. Shadows danced on the walls, mocking her with memories of happier times. Lucy's eyes swept over her meager possessions, each item a bittersweet reminder of what she had lost. Her heart ached, a dull, persistent throb that seemed to echo in the silence. Taking a deep breath, Lucy squared her shoulders. The air felt heavy, laden with the weight of her decision. "I must seek my fortune abroad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The words hung in the air, a fragile promise of a future yet unknown. With trembling hands, Lucy withdrew her modest savings from the local bank. The coins clinked softly in her palm, a pitiful chorus of her worldly wealth. She clutched them tightly, feeling the cold metal warm against her skin. Each coin represented a step towards a new life, a life she could barely imagine. The docks bustled with activity, a cacophony of shouts and creaking wood. Salty air whipped Lucy's hair as she purchased passage on a ship bound for the continent. The vessel loomed before her, a behemoth of wood and iron that seemed to scrape the very sky. As she boarded, Lucy cast one last glance at the familiar shores of England. The coastline blurred through her tears. Fading like a watercolor painting left out in the rain, the journey proved to be a baptism by sea. Violent storms battered the ship, tossing it about like a child's toy. Lucy found herself confined to her cramped cabin, her body racked with severe seasickness. The world spun and lurched around her, a dizzying kaleidoscope of misery. She clung to her narrow bunk, the rough wood digging into her palms as she prayed for the ordeal to end. When at last the ship docked in Labascore, Lucy stumbled onto solid ground. Her legs wobbled like a newborn colt's, her stomach still roiling from the journey. The foreign land stretched out before her, a tapestry of unfamiliar sights, sounds, and smells. She stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the cacophony of voices speaking a language she didn't understand. The bustling marketplace assaulted her senses. Vendors called out their wares in rapid-fire French, the words flowing over Lucy like a swift current. Vibrant fabrics fluttered in the breeze, and the air was thick with the scent of exotic spices. She clutched her small valise tightly, feeling like a leaf caught in a whirlwind. Panic began to rise in her chest, threatening to choke her. "Breathe," she whispered to herself, forcing air into her lungs. "You've come too far to falter now." The words were a lifeline, anchoring her in the sea of chaos. Gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, Lucy approached a woman whose kind face stood out in the sea of strangers. With halting gestures and the few French words she knew, Lucy managed to convey her need for directions to a respectable inn. The woman's eyes softened with understanding, and she pointed Lucy towards a narrow street lined with neat buildings. The inn was a haven of relative quiet after the chaos of the marketplace. As Lucy settled into a chair in the common room, her ears pricked at the sound of English being spoken nearby. Two women were engaged in animated conversation, and a name caught Lucy's attention. Madame Beck's Pensionnat. "They're in need of an English teacher, I hear," one woman said to the other. The word sent a jolt of electricity through Lucy's weary body. Could this be the opportunity she had been hoping for? She leaned in, straining to catch every word of their conversation, her heart pounding with renewed hope. When the women had finished speaking, Lucy approached them with a polite smile. "Pardon me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I couldn't help but overhear. Could you tell me where I might find this pensionnat?" The women looked at her curiously but provided the information she sought. With renewed determination, Lucy gathered her belongings and set out into the streets of the foreign city. Her future lay somewhere in this strange new land, and she was resolved to find it. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets, Lucy found herself standing before a large, imposing building. Her eyes traced the contours of the structure, taking in every detail. This was Madame Beck's Pensionnat, looming in the heart of Villette. The building seemed to pulse with possibility, both intimidating and alluring to the weary traveler. Lucy's hand trembled as she reached for the heavy iron knocker. Would this be the beginning of her new life, or just another dead end in a foreign land? Lucy stood before Madame Beck's pensionnat, her eyes tracing the contours of the large imposing building. The structure loomed in the heart of Villette, its presence both intimidating and alluring to the weary traveler. A chill wind whispered through the narrow streets, carrying with it the scent of rain and unfamiliar spices. Lucy pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her shoulders, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm against her ribs. The pensionnat's weathered stone facade seemed to watch her, its windows like dark, judging eyes. Taking a deep breath that tasted of fear and hope, Lucy approached the entrance. Her trembling fingers grasped the iron knocker, its cold touch grounding her in reality. The resulting sound echoed ominously, like a death knell for her old life. The heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit foyer. The scent of polished wood and musty books enveloped her, a bittersweet reminder of home. Shadows danced on the walls cast by flickering gas lamps that struggled against the gloom. As if conjured by Lucy's anxious thoughts, a woman materialized before her, Madame Beck herself. Her sharp eyes glinted in the low light, her stern demeanor a palpable force in the air between them. Lucy felt exposed, vulnerable, as if Madame Beck's gaze could peel back her skin and examine the doubts and fears that lay beneath. "Bonjour, madame," Lucy managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Je suis ici pour." The words stuck in her throat, her limited French deserting her in this crucial moment. Madame Beck's eyebrow arched, a subtle movement that spoke volumes. Lucy's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she forced herself to continue, gesturing with her hands to fill the gaps in her vocabulary. "Anglais," she said, tapping her chest. "Enseigner. Teach." Madame Beck's lips twitched, whether in amusement or disdain, Lucy couldn't tell. The silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. "Très bien," Madame Beck said finally, her voice cool and controlled. "You may stay on a trial basis. English teacher for the younger students." Relief washed over Lucy like a summer rain, soothing her frayed nerves. She had a foothold, however precarious, in this strange new world. A young maid appeared, beckoning Lucy to follow. As they climbed the creaking stairs, the weight of Madame Beck's gaze lingered, an unseen presence at her back. The attic room was barely larger than a closet, with a narrow bed that sagged in the middle and a rickety chair that wobbled on uneven legs. A small window looked out over the rooftops of Villette, offering a slice of sky that seemed both a taunt and a promise of freedom. To Lucy, it was a sanctuary, a place to call her own in this unfamiliar city. The following days blurred together in a whirlwind of new faces and daunting challenges. Lucy's limited French felt like a wall between her and the world around her, each interaction a struggle to make herself understood. She relied heavily on exaggerated gestures and facial expressions, feeling at times like a mime performing for an unimpressed audience. In the staff room, Lucy noticed Rosine, a young teacher whose laughter rang out like bells in the austere atmosphere of the pensionnat. Rosine moved through the halls with an easy grace, her flirtatious behavior a stark contrast to the somber mood that permeated the building. Lucy watched her, fascinated and envious of the ease with which she navigated this world that felt so alien. Madame Beck's presence was a constant, looming shadow. Her eyes seemed to be everywhere at once, missing nothing. Lucy felt the weight of that gaze, always evaluating, always judging. It made her skin prickle, as if tiny insects were crawling just beneath the surface. One night, as the pensionnat slept and the moon cast long fingers of light across Lucy's tiny room, she awoke with a start. A figure stood over her belongings, rifling through them with quiet efficiency. Lucy's heart pounded like a trapped bird in her chest as she recognized Madame Beck's silhouette in the darkness. The realization hit Lucy like a physical blow. Her privacy, the one thing she thought she had in this strange place, was an illusion. Madame Beck's need for control extended even here, into the deepest corners of the night. Lucy lay still, her breath shallow, until Madame Beck slipped away like a ghost, leaving only the lingering scent of her perfume behind. Despite these challenges, Lucy's quiet determination began to shine through. In her classroom, she found a strength she didn't know she possessed. Unable to rely on lengthy explanations, she developed innovative methods to engage her students. She used drawings, songs, and games to bring the English language to life, her gestures becoming more confident with each passing day. Slowly but surely, Lucy's students began to respond. Their eyes lit up with understanding. Their voices grew confident as they practiced new words. Even Madame Beck, during her frequent unannounced observations, couldn't hide a flicker of grudging respect. As the days turned to weeks, Lucy felt herself growing stronger, more assured. The pensionnat was still a maze of unfamiliar corridors and unspoken rules, but she was learning to navigate it. With each small victory in the classroom, each word of French mastered, Lucy felt herself becoming a part of this world. Her innovative teaching methods continued to evolve, earning her the respect of both her colleagues and her students. In the face of adversity, Lucy's natural teaching ability had found its moment to shine, illuminating a path forward in this strange new chapter of her life. As Lucy prepared for bed one evening, a sense of unease settled over her like a heavy blanket. The air felt charged, as if a storm was brewing just beyond the horizon. She paused at her window, gazing out at the moonlit rooftops of Villette. Something was different, but she couldn't put her finger on what. Suddenly, the silence of the night was broken by the soft patter of footsteps and hushed whispers echoing through the corridors. Lucy's ears perked up, her senses attuned to the sudden shift in the air. What could be happening at this late hour? Her heart raced as she reached for the doorknob, torn between curiosity and caution. The corridors of the pensionnat echoed with the soft patter of footsteps and hushed whispers. Lucy's ears perked up, her senses attuned to the sudden shift in the air. A group of students huddled near the infirmary, their eyes wide with curiosity, like sparrows gathered around a shiny object. As Lucy approached, the excited murmurs grew louder. Through the gap in their circle, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure in a crisp white coat. Her heart stuttered, then raced. Those kind eyes, that gentle smile. It couldn't be, could it? But as he turned, Lucy's suspicions crystallized into certainty. Dr. John Graham, the son of her godmother from England, stood before her, tending to a sick student. The sight of him sent a jolt through her system, memories of her childhood flooding back like a warm tide breaking against the shore of her mind. Lucy's throat tightened. She wanted to call out, to run to him, but something held her back. A cold tendril of doubt snaked its way around her heart. Would he even remember her? The girl she had been in England seemed so far removed from the woman she was now. In the days that followed, fate seemed to delight in throwing them together. Each encounter was a bittersweet torment for Lucy. Her heart would soar with hope, only to plummet when Dr. John's gaze passed over her without a flicker of recognition. It was as if she were a ghost, invisible and intangible, haunting the halls of her own life. It was during one of these chance meetings that Lucy encountered Ginevra Fanshawe. The student's beauty was a radiant thing, matched only by the vivacity of her personality. Ginevra, oblivious to Lucy's connection with Dr. John, latched onto her as a confidant. "Oh, Lucy," Ginevra would sigh, her eyes sparkling like dewdrops in the morning sun. "Have you ever seen a man so handsome? Dr. John is like a prince from a fairy tale." Lucy would listen, a bittersweet smile playing on her lips. She found herself caught in a strange dance, privy to both sides of a budding romance. On one hand, she had Ginevra's girlish fantasies, painted in vibrant hues of hope and desire. On the other, she witnessed Dr. John's growing admiration for the young beauty, his eyes following Ginevra's graceful form whenever she passed by. The autumn days grew shorter, the air crisp with the promise of winter. Lucy noticed a change in Dr. John's demeanor. His gaze would linger on her face, a furrow of concentration between his brows. It was as if he were trying to place a familiar melody heard long ago, the notes just out of reach. Finally, on a morning when the air was sharp with frost, recognition dawned in his eyes. "Lucy Snow," he exclaimed, his voice a mixture of surprise and warmth. "Can it really be you?" The joy of being remembered, of being seen, washed over Lucy like a soothing balm. Yet as she engaged in conversation with Dr. John, recounting shared memories and catching up on the years gone by. A hollow ache began to form in her chest. This reunion, sweet as it was, served as a stark reminder of how much her life had changed. The Lucy who had known Dr. John in England seemed like a stranger now, a ghost of a girl who had lived a different life in a different world. As night fell, Lucy found herself standing by the window of her small room. The moon hung low in the sky, a pale orb casting long shadows across the courtyard. The unfamiliar Belgian landscape stretched out before her, a testament to how far she had come from the life she once knew. In that moment, the weight of her solitude pressed down upon her like a heavy cloak. She was adrift in a sea of foreign faces and unfamiliar customs, clinging to the flotsam of her past. The Pensionnat, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in around her. Lucy closed her eyes, allowing a single tear to trace its way down her cheek. The cool trail it left behind was a stark contrast to the warmth of the memories that flooded her mind. In the silence of her room, she grappled with the conflicting emotions that churned within her. Nostalgia for her past life in England warred with the reality of her present. The joy of reconnecting with Dr. John was tempered by the pain of watching him fall for another. And through it all, a growing sense of isolation threatened to overwhelm her. As she lay in bed staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, Lucy made a silent vow. She would forge ahead, carving out a place for herself in this new world. The path ahead might be lonely, but she would walk it with determination. For now, though, she allowed herself this moment of vulnerability, this acknowledgement of her struggles, before steeling herself for the challenges that lay ahead. As sleep finally claimed her, Lucy's last conscious thought was of Dr. John's kind eyes and gentle smile. Little did she know that with each passing day, her feelings for him would only grow deeper, setting the stage for a tumultuous journey of the heart. Lucy's feelings for Dr. John Graham deepened with each passing day. She found herself cherishing every moment they spent together, savoring their conversations and his occasional visits to the school. His presence was a balm to her soul, a warm ray of sunshine breaking through the monotonous clouds of her daily life. The sound of his footsteps echoing down the corridor would make her heart race, and the mere sight of his kind eyes and gentle smile was enough to set butterflies fluttering in her stomach. But as the days melted into weeks, Lucy's hopes began to wither like neglected flowers. She couldn't help but notice the way Dr. John's gaze lingered on Ginevra Fanshawe, his eyes sparkling with an intensity that was never directed at her. It was as if Ginevra was a dazzling star, and Dr. John a helpless astronomer, completely captivated by her brilliance. Lucy watched with a heavy heart as Dr. John pursued Ginevra relentlessly. His words, when directed at Ginevra, dripped with adoration, each syllable carefully chosen to impress. Gifts appeared at Ginevra's door with alarming frequency. Bouquets of vibrant flowers that filled the air with their sweet perfume, boxes of exquisite chocolates tied with silk ribbons, and delicate trinkets that sparkled in the sunlight. Love letters found their way into Ginevra's hands, each one filled with passionate declarations that made Lucy's chest ache with a longing so intense it felt physical. Fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Lucy found herself caught in the middle of this one-sided romance, an unwilling confidant to both parties. The weight of their shared secrets pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe at times. Ginevra, with her casual indifference, would often seek out Lucy to share her thoughts on Dr. John's devotion. Her golden curls bouncing with each step, she'd approach Lucy with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Can you believe it, Lucy?" Ginevra would say, her voice light and airy. "Another letter from Dr. John. He's so persistent, it's almost amusing." She'd toss her hair over her shoulder, the movement wafting her expensive perfume towards Lucy. Lucy would force a smile, feeling the cracks in her heart widen with each careless word. She wanted to shake Ginevra, to make her see the treasure she was so callously discarding. But instead she listened silently, her own feelings buried deep beneath a mask of polite interest, her nails digging into her palms as she fought to maintain her composure. On the other side, Lucy bore witness to Dr. John's blind infatuation. His eyes would light up at the mere mention of Ginevra's name, his words tumbling out in an eager rush whenever he spoke of her. It was like watching a moth drawn to a flame, beautiful and tragic all at once. The passion in his voice when he spoke of Ginevra was a dagger to Lucy's heart, twisting deeper with each enthusiastic word. As the days wore on, Lucy found herself withdrawing into her own world. The bustling corridors of the school, once a source of comfort, now felt suffocating. The chatter of students, the scrape of chairs against floors, the constant hum of activity, it all became too much. She threw herself into her work, finding solace in the routine of lessons and grading papers. But even as she immersed herself in her duties, the loneliness crept in like a shadow at dusk, wrapping its cold tendrils around her heart. The contrast between her quiet suffering and the lively atmosphere of the school became more pronounced with each passing day. Laughter echoed through the halls, students chattered excitedly about their lives and loves, while Lucy felt like a ghost drifting through their midst. She was there but not really present, her heart a million miles away, lost in a sea of unfulfilled desires and crushing disappointment. Depression settled over Lucy like a heavy fog, clouding her thoughts and dampening her spirit. The world seemed to lose its color, fading to shades of gray that matched her mood. She struggled to maintain her composure, to keep the mask of normalcy firmly in place. But inside she was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of emotions, too vast and turbulent to navigate. Each day became a battle, a test of her strength and resilience. Lucy clung to her routines like a lifeline, forcing herself to go through the motions of living. She woke up, dressed, taught her classes, ate her meals, all without really tasting the food or feeling the fabric of her clothes. The joy had seeped out of her world, leaving behind a colorless existence that stretched endlessly before her. As the sun set on another day, Lucy stood at her window, watching the world outside continue to turn. The school grounds were alive with activity, students enjoying the last rays of sunlight. But inside her room, the shadows grew longer, mirroring the darkness that had taken root in her heart. The laughter from outside seemed to mock her, a stark reminder of the happiness that eluded her. Lucy's depression deepened, and she found herself sinking further into the abyss of her own loneliness. The constant reminder of her unfulfilled desires weighed heavily upon her soul, threatening to crush her under their weight. As she stared out at the darkening sky, a chill ran down her spine. The thought of facing another day, another week, another month of this existence filled her with dread. Just then, a notice pinned to the school bulletin board caught her eye. "Summer vacation approaching," it read. Lucy's heart skipped a beat. The promise of a break, of a change in routine, sparked a tiny flame of hope in her chest. But as quickly as it had appeared, the flame flickered and died. For with summer came the realization that the school would empty, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the echoing silence of the vast building. The prospect of solitude, once welcoming, now loomed before her like a yawning chasm, ready to swallow her whole. Summer arrived with a languid sigh, bringing with it the long-awaited vacation. The pensionnat emptied like a tide receding, leaving Lucy entirely alone in the vast, silent building. At first, the solitude felt like a cool balm on her weary spirit, a chance to breathe freely without the constant buzz of activity around her. Lucy savored these quiet moments, her footsteps echoing softly against the walls as she wandered through the empty corridors. The sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows that danced across the polished floors. Lucy trailed her fingers along the smooth wooden banisters, relishing the feel of the warm wood beneath her skin. The air hung heavy with the scent of old books and furniture polish, a familiar fragrance that usually brought comfort, but now seemed to emphasize the emptiness surrounding her. As days melted into weeks, the silence began to press in on Lucy like a heavy woolen blanket on a sweltering day. The once comforting emptiness of the rooms now seemed to mock her, amplifying her loneliness until it echoed in her very bones. She found herself talking aloud, if only to hear a human voice in the oppressive quiet. Her own words sounded strange and hollow, bouncing off the walls like pebbles thrown into a deep well. "Is anyone there?" she called out one afternoon, her voice cracking from disuse. Only the faint rustle of curtains in the breeze answered her plea. As the isolation intensified, Lucy's mind began to play tricks on her. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision, fleeting and elusive. Every creak of the old building sent her heart racing, a thunderous drumbeat in her chest. She tried to shake off the growing unease, but it clung to her like a persistent fog, seeping into her very pores. One night, unable to sleep, Lucy paced the moonlit corridors. The silver light streaming through the windows cast eerie patterns on the floor, transforming familiar shapes into grotesque figures. The whisper of the night breeze through the trees outside sounded like hushed voices, carrying secrets just beyond her understanding. Her past, once carefully locked away, began to seep into her thoughts like water through cracks in a dam. Memories flooded her mind, faces of loved ones long gone, their features blurred by time but their absence still sharp as a knife. Echoes of laughter from happier times rang in her ears, a bittersweet melody that made her heart ache. The weight of losses she'd tried so hard to forget pressed down on her shoulders, threatening to crush her beneath their burden. The future, once a beacon of hope, now loomed before her like a vast, unknowable void. Lucy's breath came in the short gasps as panic gripped her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. The walls seemed to close in around her, the familiar corridors stretching endlessly like a maze with no exit. In her delirium, the line between reality and imagination blurred like watercolors on wet paper. Was that the rustle of a skirt around the corner? The tap of footsteps behind her? Lucy whirled around, her heart pounding like a trapped bird against her ribs, but found only more shadows and silence. Unable to bear the confines of the pensionnat any longer, Lucy fled into the night. The cool air hit her flushed skin like a slap, momentarily shocking her back to reality. The streets of Villette, usually so familiar, now seemed alien and threatening. Gas lamps cast pools of sickly yellow light, creating more shadows than they dispelled. Lucy wandered aimlessly, her mind clouded with despair, seeking any form of human connection to anchor her to reality. As if drawn by an unseen force, Lucy found herself at the steps of a Catholic church. The imposing structure loomed before her, its spires reaching toward the star-studded sky like grasping fingers. Inside, the air was heavy with incense, the scent cloying and thick in her throat. Flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, making the statues of saints seem to move and breathe. It was there she encountered Père Silas, a priest whose kind eyes seemed to see right through her distress. In a rush of emotion, Lucy poured out her heart to this stranger, her words tumbling out in a confused jumble of fears and loneliness. Père Silas listened patiently, his presence a balm to her frayed nerves. "My child," he said softly, his voice warm and soothing, "you are not alone in your struggles. The Lord is always with you, even in your darkest moments." As Lucy's confession came to an end, Père Silas spoke softly, offering words of comfort and understanding. But beneath his kindness, Lucy sensed a zealous undertone, like a current running beneath still waters. He spoke of the solace found in faith, of the embrace of the church that could fill the void in her heart. Perhaps, he suggested gently, you might find peace in embracing the Holy Mother Church. She offers comfort to all who seek her shelter. Lucy listened, torn between her desperate need for connection and the nagging feeling that Père Silas saw her vulnerability as an opportunity. His words of guidance seemed to pull her towards a path she wasn't sure she wanted to follow, like a spider drawing a fly into its web. As she left the church, Lucy's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. The comfort of human interaction warred with the unease of spiritual pressure. She walked back through the quiet streets of Villette, the cool night air clearing some of the fog from her mind. The cobblestones beneath her feet felt more solid now, grounding her in the present moment. The encounter with Père Silas had added a new layer to Lucy's already tumultuous state. Questions of faith and belonging in this foreign land mingled with her existing doubts and fears, creating a tapestry of uncertainty. As she made her way back to the pensionnat, Lucy realized that her journey through this dark night of the soul was far from over. The comfort she had sought had brought with it new challenges, and the path ahead remained as uncertain as ever. As Lucy approached the gates of the pensionnat, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The world tilted and spun, the ground seeming to shift beneath her feet. She stumbled, reaching out to steady herself against the cold iron bars. Her vision blurred, dark spots dancing before her eyes. As consciousness began to slip away, one thought echoed in her mind. Would anyone even notice if she disappeared into the night? The last thing Lucy saw before darkness claimed her was the looming silhouette of the Pensionnat against the starry sky, a silent sentinel to her collapse. Lucy's recovery was a slow, arduous process. Following her breakdown, she found herself navigating a delicate path back to health. Each day felt like a small battle won, her strength returning in increments as fragile as morning dew. The air in Villette seemed to shift, carrying with it the promise of change. It was during this delicate time that Père Silas, his kind eyes brimming with concern, introduced Lucy to Madame Walravens. The elderly woman's presence was as formidable as the once grand mansion she inhabited, now a shadow of its former glory. As Lucy stepped into the old house, the musty air enveloped her like a thick blanket. Floorboards creaked beneath her feet, whispering secrets of bygone eras. The walls, adorned with faded portraits, seemed to watch her every move with painted eyes that had witnessed countless stories unfold. In this decaying grandeur, Lucy found an unexpected source of comfort in Madame Walraven's invalid daughter. The frail woman, perpetually nestled in a cocoon of blankets, became Lucy's anchor. Reading aloud to her, Lucy's voice grew stronger with each passing chapter, the words on the page breathing life into the stagnant air of the sick room. By the crackling fireplace, Madame Walravens would transport Lucy to a Villette of yesteryear. Her eyes, rheumy with age, would spark to life as she spun tales of grand balls and whispered scandals. Lucy found herself lost in these stories, each one an intricate tapestry woven into the fabric of her recovery. As days melted into weeks, Lucy felt her strength returning, like a dormant flower slowly unfurling its petals to the sun. The city, once a bewildering maze, began to reveal its charms. Lucy's footsteps, hesitant at first, grew more confident as she ventured beyond the confines of the mansion and the Pensionnat. Villette's parks became her sanctuary. The whisper of leaves in the breeze and the gentle babble of hidden fountains soothed her frayed nerves. In quiet galleries, she lost herself in the vibrant hues of paintings, each brushstroke a testament to life's beauty and complexity. Returning to the Pensionnat, Lucy felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. The classroom, once a place of anxiety, transformed into her domain. She threw herself into teaching with a vigor that surprised even herself, her passion igniting a spark in her pupils' eyes. Madame Beck, ever observant, noticed the change in Lucy. With a mixture of approval and calculation glinting in her shrewd eyes, she entrusted Lucy with more responsibilities. The challenge of advanced English classes became Lucy's new mountain to conquer, and she embraced it wholeheartedly. Among her students, Lucy found an unexpected kindred spirit in Marie Brock. The shy girl with her downcast eyes and hunched shoulders stirred something deep within Lucy. With gentle encouragement and unwavering patience, Lucy coaxed Marie out of her shell. Watching the girl's confidence blossom was like witnessing a delicate bud unfurl its petals, filling Lucy with a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. As weeks turned to months, Lucy felt herself transforming. The heavy cloud of melancholy that had once enveloped her began to lift, allowing rays of hope to pierce through. She was no longer just existing in Villette. She was living, breathing, and thriving. The city, once a place of exile, was becoming home. Lucy found herself building a life that extended beyond the confines of her own mind and past sorrows. She was an active participant in her own story, ready to embrace whatever challenges and joys lay ahead. Yet as Lucy stood at the threshold of this new chapter in her life, a whisper of change hung in the air. Rumors swirled through the corridors of the Pensionnat, speaking of a new arrival that would shake the very foundations of Lucy's carefully constructed world. The name Paul Emanuel was on everyone's lips, a professor known for his intense and often abrasive personality. As night fell over Villette, Lucy found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. Little did she know that the arrival of this enigmatic figure would set in motion a series of events that would challenge and reshape her very being. The dawn of a new day approached, bringing with it the promise of a storm that would either break or make Lucy snow. Lucy's life at the Pensionnat was on the brink of a dramatic transformation. The arrival of Paul Emanuel, a professor known for his intense and often abrasive personality, would set in motion a series of events that would challenge and reshape her very being. The air hummed with anticipation as students bustled about, their excited chatter filling the halls like a swarm of busy bees. Lucy stood apart, a quiet island in the sea of activity. Her eyes, ever observant, took in the scene around her, noting the nervous fidgeting of her peers and the occasional burst of laughter. The scent of chalk and old books mingled with the perfume of young ladies, creating an atmosphere thick with possibility. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the din like a knife, silencing the room in an instant. All eyes turned to the source, and Lucy felt her breath catch in her throat. There, framed by the doorway, stood Paul Emanuel. He was small in stature, but his presence filled the room like a thundercloud. Dark eyes flashed as they scanned the crowd, seeming to pierce through each person they landed on. When his gaze fell on Lucy, she felt a jolt of electricity run through her body, his brow furrowed, lips curling into a disapproving frown. "You there," he barked, pointing at Lucy with a finger that seemed to accuse. "Why do you stand there like a statue, and in such drab attire? This is a celebration, not a funeral." Lucy's cheeks burned hot with embarrassment as all eyes turned to her. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words stuck in her throat like molasses. Paul's criticism stung, but there was something in his intense gaze that made her want to stand her ground. She lifted her chin slightly, meeting his eyes with a quiet defiance that surprised even herself. Despite this rocky start, Paul's interest in Lucy's intellectual development soon became apparent. Like a stern gardener tending to a neglected plant, he began nurturing her mind with challenging texts from his personal library. French novels, their pages crisp and smelling of adventure. Latin poetry that rolled off the tongue like honey. Philosophical treatises that made her brain ache in the most delightful way. Each book was a new world for Lucy to explore. Their discussions were like fencing matches, with Paul constantly pushing Lucy to parry his arguments and thrust forward with her own ideas. His words flew fast and sharp, like the crack of a whip. At times, his passionate nature bordered on overwhelming, like a storm threatening to sweep Lucy away. Yet she found herself rising to meet each challenge, her quiet strength growing with each encounter. It was as if Paul had struck a match in a dark room, illuminating corners of her mind she hadn't known existed. As the weeks passed, Lucy found herself observing Paul with increasing curiosity. She watched as he moved through the school, a whirlwind of energy and emotion. His temper could flare like summer lightning, quick and fierce, but just as swiftly it would pass. And in its wake, Lucy began to notice moments of surprising tenderness. One day she overheard a conversation between Paul and Madame Beck about a struggling student. Paul's voice, usually so harsh, softened like velvet as he spoke of arranging anonymous financial support for the girl. It was like catching a glimpse of a hidden garden behind a forbidding wall, and Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. As Lucy and Paul spent more time together, their relationship evolved into something neither could have predicted. It was a delicate dance, full of steps, forward and back, turns and dips. They circled each other warily, like two cats unsure whether to fight or play. Paul's gruff exterior began to crack, revealing glimpses of a deep and complex character. Lucy found herself drawn to his passion for knowledge, his unwavering dedication to his students, and the flashes of kindness that peeked through his stern facade like rays of sunlight through storm clouds. For his part, Paul seemed to see in Lucy what others often missed. He looked past her quiet exterior and recognized a keen mind and a strong spirit. His challenges and critiques, though often delivered harshly, were aimed at drawing out the best in her, like a sculptor chipping away at marble to reveal the masterpiece within. As their relationship deepened, Lucy felt a new sense of self-worth blossoming within her. It was as if Paul's fierce belief in her potential had planted a seed, and now, nurtured by their intellectual exchanges and growing mutual respect, it was beginning to flower. She found herself approaching life with a new curiosity, eager to learn and grow, to challenge herself and be challenged in return. Their intellectual sparring matches became the highlight of Lucy's days. She would prepare for them as a warrior prepares for battle, arming herself with knowledge and sharpening her wit. And though Paul's words could still sting, she began to see them as whetstone, honing her intellect to a fine edge. In Paul, Lucy discovered a kindred spirit, someone who valued the life of the mind as much as she did. He saw beyond her plain appearance and reserved manner, recognizing in her a depth of character that resonated with his own. And in this recognition, Lucy found something she had long been missing, a sense of being truly seen and understood. As the sun set on another day at the Pensionnat, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Lucy found herself lost in thought. The air was thick with the scent of blooming roses, their perfume a stark contrast to the musty smell of old books that clung to her clothes. She closed her eyes, savoring the warmth of the fading light on her face, when a familiar voice called her name. Lucy's eyes snapped open, her heart racing. But as she turned to face the speaker, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. For there, standing before her, was a face she never thought she'd see again. A ghost from her past that threatened to shatter the fragile new world she had built. Lucy's world tilted on its axis as past and present collided in a dizzying moment of recognition. Dr. John, the man she had come to know in her new life, was revealed to be none other than Graham Bretton, a figure from her childhood in England. The revelation left Lucy reeling, her mind a whirlwind of memories and emotions. She found herself transported back to her youth, recalling the boy Graham had been, all golden curls and mischievous smiles. Now as she looked at Dr. John, she saw those same features, matured and refined, like a familiar painting viewed through new eyes. Before Lucy could fully process this startling discovery, fate dealt her another unexpected hand. Like a phantom stepping out of the mists of memory, Paulina Home, now known as Polly, materialized in her present. The once little girl Lucy remembered had blossomed into a captivating young woman, her presence as unexpected and delightful as the first crocus of spring pushing through winter's frost. Polly's arrival stirred the air like a warm breeze after a long, cold spell. Her laughter, light and melodious, seemed to breathe new life into the rooms of Mrs. Bretton's home. As Mrs. Bretton's goddaughter, she slipped back into Graham's life with the ease of a key finding its lock. Their childhood friendship, reigniting with the intensity of a long-dormant ember, suddenly fanned to flame. Lucy found herself a silent observer, watching from the shadows as Graham and Polly's relationship unfolded. Their interactions were a dance of shy glances and tentative touches, each moment charged with an electricity that made the air around them shimmer with possibility. Days melted into weeks, and Lucy witnessed the gradual deepening of their bond. Graham's eyes, once merely friendly, now sparkled with undisguised adoration whenever they fell upon Polly. His laughter, always warm, took on a richer timbre in her presence, like honey poured over velvet. Polly, in turn, seemed to bloom under his attention, her cheeks perpetually flushed with a rosy glow that spoke of newfound joy and barely contained excitement. For Lucy, this unfolding romance was a bittersweet symphony that played upon her heartstrings. Each tender moment between Graham and Polly produced notes of both joy and sorrow, leaving her caught in an emotional riptide. She found herself pulled between the lingering echoes of her own feelings for Graham and the genuine happiness she felt at seeing him so content. As Graham fell deeper into love's embrace, Lucy felt her own heart shifting. The affection she had harbored for him began to transform, like a caterpillar shedding its cocoon. What emerged was a platonic love, pure and untainted by romantic yearning. It was as if a veil had been lifted from her eyes, allowing her to see Graham clearly for the first time, not as a potential lover, but as a dear friend. This metamorphosis of emotion was both painful and liberating. Lucy's unrequited feelings, once a constant ache in her chest, began to fade like mist in the morning sun. In their place grew a sense of possibility, a newfound openness to what the future might hold. Her thoughts, unbidden, began to turn more frequently to Paul Emanuel, their interactions taking on a new significance in the light of her emotional evolution. As Graham and Polly's relationship deepened, Lucy found herself stepping into a new role. No longer a potential romantic rival, she became their trusted confidant, a bridge between their past and present. They sought her advice, valuing her insight and unwavering support. In quiet moments, Lucy marveled at the twists and turns of fate that had brought them all to this point. Life, she reflected, was like a winding river, its course unpredictable, its waters capable of both nurturing growth and eroding old certainties. As she watched Graham and Polly's love story unfold, Lucy felt herself carried along by the current, curious and cautiously optimistic about where it might lead her next. As the days passed, Lucy found her thoughts increasingly drawn to Paul Emanuel. Their encounters, once marked by tension and misunderstanding, now held a different energy. She caught herself looking forward to their debates, relishing the spark of intellect and passion that ignited between them. It was as if, freed from the weight of her feelings for Graham, she was finally able to see Paul clearly. One evening, as Lucy walked through the school's corridors, she heard Paul's voice drifting from an open classroom door. Her heart quickened, and she paused, torn between the desire to seek him out and the fear of what that desire might mean. As she stood there, caught in indecision, she heard footsteps approaching from behind. Turning, she found herself face to face with Paul himself, his dark eyes intense and searching as they met hers. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and possibilities, leaving Lucy breathless with anticipation of what might come next. Lucy and Paul's relationship was blossoming, growing deeper with each passing day. Their bond strengthened, but so did the opposition they faced from those around them. The once welcoming halls of the school now felt like a labyrinth, designed to keep them apart. Madame Beck, her eyes glinting with barely concealed jealousy, wove a web of interference around the budding couple. She assigned Lucy additional duties with surgical precision, each one timed to pull her away from Paul's orbit. Lucy found herself rushing through corridors, arms laden with books and papers, her heart racing not from exertion, but from the fear of missing another precious moment with Paul. The air felt thick with tension, every shadow seeming to hide a watchful eye. Paul, too, felt the squeeze of Madame Beck's machinations. His once flexible schedule vanished like morning mist, replaced by an endless stream of urgent tasks and impromptu meetings. The few moments they managed to steal together became as precious as water in a parched desert. But love, like a determined vine, finds ways to grow even in the harshest conditions. Lucy and Paul discovered hidden pockets of time, fleeting opportunities to be together. The school's garden became their sanctuary, a small patch of green where they could breathe freely, away from prying eyes. Under the dappled shade of an old oak, they'd sit, their voices low but filled with passion. The gentle rustle of leaves above them seemed to whisper encouragement, while the soft earth beneath offered a comforting embrace. "You see, Lucy," Paul would say, his voice softening, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. "There's a world beyond these walls, full of wonder and possibility." As he spoke of his dreams, of the future he envisioned, Lucy felt her own world expanding, like a bird spreading its wings for the first time. In turn, Lucy shared her own stories, her voice usually so controlled, now trembling slightly as she spoke of past struggles and the loneliness that had been her constant companion. Paul listened intently, his hand sometimes reaching out to touch hers, a gesture that spoke volumes in its simplicity. Their relationship evolved, like a delicate flower pushing through hard soil, facing the harsh elements but determined to bloom. The initial antagonism that had marked their early interactions melted away, replaced by a deep mutual understanding and respect. But their growing feelings didn't exist in a vacuum. The world around them pressed in, a constant reminder of the obstacles they faced. Père Silas and Madame Walravens joined Madame Beck's silent crusade, their whispers echoing through the corridors like a chilling wind, painting Lucy as an outsider, a threat to their carefully constructed world. Societal expectations loomed large, an invisible but palpable barrier. Their religious differences, once just a topic of spirited debate, now cast long shadows over their future. Each stolen moment together felt bittersweet, tinged with the knowledge of the challenges that lay ahead. Yet in each other's eyes they saw a future worth fighting for. Paul's once rigid Catholic beliefs began to soften, like wax near a flame, as Lucy's Protestant perspective opened new avenues of thought. Lucy, in turn, was drawn to Paul's passion for education and social justice, watching with admiration as he worked tirelessly to provide opportunities for underprivileged students. As the sun began to set on another day, casting long shadows across the garden, Lucy and Paul sat in comfortable silence, their hands intertwined. The air was heavy with the scent of blooming roses and the weight of unspoken words. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the garden, their silhouette backlit by the dying sun. As they approached, Lucy felt Paul tense beside her. The figure stepped into the fading light, revealing themselves to be a messenger, out of breath and clutching a letter. "Monsieur Emanuel," the messenger gasped, extending the letter with a trembling hand. "Urgent news from Guadeloupe." Paul took the letter, his brow furrowing as he broke the seal. As his eyes scanned the contents, Lucy watched his expression shift from confusion to disbelief. The paper slipped from his fingers, floating to the ground like a fallen leaf. "Paul?" Lucy whispered, her heart pounding. "What is it?" Paul turned to her, his eyes wide with shock. "Everything," he breathed. "Everything is about to change." Paul Emanuel's life took an unexpected turn. A distant relative in Guadeloupe had left him a substantial fortune, forever altering the course of his future. The crisp envelope trembled in Paul's hands as he read and reread the letter, his dark eyes widening with each pass. The weight of possibility settled on his shoulders like a warm, heavy cloak. His mind raced, thoughts tumbling over one another like pebbles in a swift stream. In this windfall, he saw not just wealth, but a key to unlock the door to a shared future with Lucy. The air in Paul's small study seemed to crackle with electricity as he absorbed the news. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow on the scattered papers on his desk. The familiar scent of old books and ink mingled with the fresh breeze that carried the promise of change. As the initial shock subsided, Paul's natural inclination for planning took over. He threw himself into researching properties in Villette with the fervor of a man possessed. Every spare moment found him poring over real estate listings, his fingers tracing the outlines of potential school buildings on wrinkled papers spread across his desk. The scratch of his pen and the rustle of papers filled the room, a symphony of ambition and hope. Lucy watched this transformation with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Paul's enthusiasm was infectious, his eyes alight with a new fire as he shared his vision with her. "Can you imagine it, Lucy?" he'd say, his voice thick with excitement. "A school of our own, where we can shape young minds together." The word "together" hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and unspoken questions. Lucy found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, her heart alternating between soaring hope and gripping fear. The prospect of running her own school, a dream she'd scarcely allowed herself to entertain, now seemed tantalizingly within reach. As they worked side by side, developing curricula and debating educational philosophies, Lucy felt their bond deepening. Paul's respect for her professional abilities was evident in every question he asked, every suggestion he considered. It was as if they were building not just a school, but a bridge between their two worlds. The days blurred into weeks, filled with feverish planning and shared dreams. Lucy found herself swept up in Paul's vision, her own hopes and aspirations intertwining with his. Yet even as she allowed herself to be carried along by the current of possibility, a nagging anxiety gnawed at the edges of her consciousness. The speed at which her life was changing left her breathless, like standing at the edge of a cliff, exhilarated by the view but terrified of the drop. The impending trip to Guadeloupe loomed over them like a storm cloud on the horizon. Paul's need to settle the estate meant an inevitable separation, a thought that filled Lucy with a sense of dread she couldn't quite shake. Time seemed to slip through their fingers like sand, each passing day bringing them closer to a parting neither wanted to face. As the plans for the school took shape, so too did Lucy's vision of a future she had never dared to imagine. In quiet moments, she found herself picturing classrooms filled with eager students, Paul by her side as they nurtured young minds together. These daydreams were like delicate soap bubbles, beautiful but fragile, always on the verge of bursting. The shadow of their differences, religious, cultural, personal, still lingered, a constant reminder of the challenges they faced. Lucy and Paul grappled with these issues in long, intense conversations, that often left them both emotionally drained but somehow closer. "We'll find a way," Paul would insist, his voice a mixture of determination and pleading. "Our differences don't have to divide us. They can make us stronger." Lucy wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of her fears and embrace the future he envisioned. But years of loneliness and self-doubt were not so easily overcome. She found herself standing at a crossroads, torn between the safety of her solitary existence and the unknown territory of a life shared with Paul. As they continued to work on their plans, the urgency of their situation pressed upon them. Every shared glance, every accidental touch seemed charged with newfound meaning. They were no longer just colleagues or friends, but two people on the brink of something profound, each step forward bringing them closer to a precipice that both thrilled and terrified them. In quiet moments, when the excitement of planning gave way to reflection, Lucy found herself imagining a future she never thought possible, one where she could combine her passion for teaching with a deep, meaningful relationship. However, the specter of religious and cultural differences continued to cast a shadow over their plans as they grappled with how to reconcile their different backgrounds and beliefs in a shared life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Lucy felt a sudden chill. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Tomorrow was the day Paul would leave for Guadeloupe. The weight of unsaid words and unexplored feelings pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She turned to Paul, her heart racing, knowing that this might be their last moment alone before everything changed. But as she opened her mouth to speak, a sharp knock at the door shattered the moment, leaving Lucy frozen, her words caught in her throat. Paul's departure for Guadeloupe loomed on the horizon. The eve of this life-altering journey had finally arrived, bringing with it a surge of emotions and unspoken words. The school's garden, a haven of tranquility, buzzed with an electric undercurrent of anticipation. Lucy's heart fluttered like the butterflies dancing among the vibrant blooms. The air was thick with the sweet perfume of roses and the heady scent of jasmine, nature's own love potion. As the setting sun painted the sky in a breathtaking canvas of pinks and golds, Paul led Lucy to a secluded corner. His hands, warm and slightly trembling, enveloped hers. Lucy's breath caught in her throat, the world around her fading away until only Paul remained. "Lucy," he began, his voice a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I've carried these words in my heart for so long. You've become my world, my reason for waking each morning. I love you, deeply and completely." Lucy's eyes widened, her lips parting in a silent gasp. Joy, pure and overwhelming, surged through her veins. She'd dreamed of this moment countless times, but reality far surpassed her imagination. Paul's words tumbled out, urgent and heartfelt. "I must leave for Guadeloupe, but I swear to return in 3 years. Every day away, I'll work tirelessly to build our future. Will you wait for me, Lucy? Will you give our love a chance to bloom?" Tears welled in Lucy's eyes, blurring the edges of Paul's beloved face. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Paul, my heart has been yours for so long. I'll wait, no matter how many seasons pass." Their embrace was tender yet fierce, a physical manifestation of their commitment. The garden seemed to rejoice with them, flowers swaying in a gentle breeze, their petals a shower of natural confetti. The next day dawned bright and clear, a bittersweet reminder of their impending separation. Hand in hand, they wandered through Villette's cobblestone streets. Every sight, sound, and smell etched itself into their memories. The cheerful chime of church bells, the aroma of freshly baked bread, the vibrant colors of market stalls. They visited Lucy's future school, a building brimming with potential. As they explored, Paul listened intently to Lucy's ideas, his eyes shining with pride. "You'll transform this place, Lucy," he said, squeezing her hand. "I can already see it filled with laughter and learning." As twilight approached, Paul presented Lucy with an ornate box. Inside lay a set of gleaming keys. "For you," he said softly, "the keys to your school and to our shared dreams." Lucy's fingers trembled as she grasped the keys, their weight a tangible reminder of Paul's faith in her. It was more than a gift. It was a promise of the future they would build together. Their final moments were a whirlwind of emotions. They clung to each other, whispering vows of devotion and promises of joyful reunions. Paul's lips brushed Lucy's forehead, a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. At the harbor, Lucy watched Paul's ship depart, her eyes never leaving the horizon until it vanished from sight. The salty air whipped around her, carrying the scent of new beginnings and distant shores. With determination in her heart and the keys clutched tightly in her hand, she turned away, ready to face the long wait ahead. As Lucy made her way home, a strange feeling of unease crept over her. The streets of Villette, once so familiar, now seemed alien and foreboding. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the true magnitude of the challenge ahead. 3 years of separation, of uncertainty, of hoping against hope. She clutched the keys tighter, their edges digging into her palm. 3 years, she whispered to herself. Just 3 years. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Lucy couldn't shake the feeling that fate had other plans in store. 3 years had passed since Paul's departure. In that time, Lucy had thrown herself into managing the school he had established for her, proving herself to be a capable and innovative headmistress. The once quiet halls of the school now buzzed with life, filled with the chatter of eager students and the scratch of chalk on blackboards. Lucy's days were a whirlwind of activity, her mind constantly racing with new ideas to improve the curriculum and inspire her pupils. She introduced advanced courses in literature and sciences, watching with pride as young minds blossomed under her guidance. On a crisp autumn morning, Lucy paused by a large window overlooking the bustling streets of Villette. The golden sunlight caught the turning leaves, creating a tapestry of reds and oranges that mirrored the warmth in her heart. She marveled at how far she had come, from a timid governess to the respected head of a thriving institution. The satisfaction of her professional success was a balm to her soul, yet it couldn't entirely soothe the tender ache that persisted in her heart. Paul's letters, arriving like clockwork across the vast expanse of ocean, were her lifeline. Each envelope bearing his familiar scrawl was a treasure she would carefully open in the solitude of her office. The paper carried the faint scent of sea salt, and as Lucy's fingers traced his words, she could almost hear his voice whispering in her ear. His vivid descriptions painted pictures of distant shores, lush tropical forests, azure seas, and vibrant marketplaces. Lucy found herself transported, if only for a moment, to these far-off lands. She would close her eyes imagining the warmth of the sun on her skin and the sound of waves lapping at the shore. As Lucy settled into her new rhythm, she found unexpected friendships blossoming. The educational community of Villette, once a daunting circle of strangers, now embraced her with open arms. Fellow educators became confidants and supporters, recognizing the passion that burned bright within her. Their camaraderie was a comfort, yet it couldn't fill the Paul-shaped void in her life. Time seemed to both crawl and fly as the 3-year mark of Paul's departure approached. Lucy's anticipation grew with each passing day, a mix of excitement and nervousness fluttering in her chest like a caged bird. She caught herself daydreaming about their reunion, imagining the warmth of his smile, the sound of his voice no longer muffled by distance. But as the expected date of Paul's arrival came and went, Lucy's excitement gave way to a gnawing anxiety. She tried to quell her fears, reasoning that delays were common in sea travel. Yet when whispers of a violent storm in the Atlantic reached Villette, her composure began to crack. Lucy's days became a feverish quest for information. She pored over newspapers, her eyes scanning every line for mention of ships returning from the West Indies. The rustle of paper and the smudge of ink on her fingers became constant companions. Each newcomer to the city became a potential bearer of news, and Lucy found herself approaching strangers with an urgency that surprised even her. Days stretched into weeks, each sunrise bringing hope and each sunset deepening her despair. The lack of word from Paul was a weight that threatened to crush her spirit, yet Lucy refused to succumb to despair. She channeled her anxiety into her work, running the school with an unwavering dedication that both impressed and concerned those around her. The school, once a symbol of their shared dream, now stood as both solace and burden. Every corner held memories of Paul, his vision, his encouragement, his faith in her abilities. Lucy found herself lingering in the classroom where they had first discussed the school's future, her fingers tracing the outline of the desk where he had sat. The smooth wood beneath her fingertips was cool, a stark contrast to the warmth of the memories it evoked. As uncertainty clouded her future, Lucy clung to hope with the tenacity of a drowning person, grasping at a lifeline. She continued to nurture the school, watching it flourish even as her heart ached. The laughter of students in the corridors, once a joy, now echoed with a bittersweet resonance. In the quiet of the evening, as she locked the school doors, Lucy would pause, her hand resting on the cool metal. She would close her eyes, allowing herself a moment to imagine Paul's return. The gentle breeze would whisper through the trees, and for a fleeting second, she could almost hear his footsteps approaching. But as the silence stretched on, Lucy would square her shoulders and step into the uncertain night. The streets of Villette, bathed in the soft glow of gaslight, seemed to hold both promise and peril. As she made her way home, the click of her heels on the cobblestones echoed her determination. Lucy's journey had been one of growth, love, and resilience. The school stood as a testament to her strength and Paul's belief in her. As she faced an uncertain future, Lucy knew that whatever tomorrow might bring, she would face it with the same courage and determination that had brought her this far. The story of Lucy Snow, once a quiet observer of life, had transformed into a tale of a woman who had found her voice and her place in the world. While the absence of Paul left a void in her heart, it could not diminish the light of her spirit. Lucy had become the author of her own story, and though its ending remained unwritten, she faced each new chapter with hope and resilience.
This book was generated using Speakter's AI voices. You can create human-like voiceovers in over 50 languages.